like to say hello to everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to today's online San Francisco Silicon Valley Innovation Entrepreneurship Group event. My name is Marita Schulze. I'm the co-founder of the Blue Column and co-chair of the World Innovations Forum Foundation. And it's a great pleasure having you all with us. Before we start, please allow me to share just a few housekeeping. There is no need to do screenshots. We will record the webinar and make the link available in the next days on the WIForum SF Silicon Valley Innovation and Entrepreneurs page. So we will inform you also via email. And during today's webinar, if you have any questions, just type them into the question box here in the Zoom control panel. Our speakers and we will do our very best to answer them during the sessions, or we also follow up with you directly. And with that, I like to hand over to our tonight's moderator, George Paris, who is sales of the Blue Column, who will be the moderator and guide you through the whole event. Hi, George. Just take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Marita. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, fellow innovators and entrepreneurs. Welcome to our online meetup of the San Francisco Silicon Valley Innovation and Entrepreneurship Group. We have a terrific set of presenters today. Leading off is Axel Schultz, chairman of the World Innovations Forum and CEO of Blue Column. Axel started and successfully exited 4 companies, the biggest reaching $5 billion in revenue and the second close to $1 billion. Axel is a published author. He's a patent holder. In 2015, he was listed as one of the global's 100 most influential startup accelerators. He was also named San Francisco's Entrepreneur Award winner for 2015 and chaired the SaaS Channel Committee at the SIIA in the United States and was an early advisor in 2003 at LinkedIn. Now, for the past 4 years, Axel is on a quest to find out how the brain is creating and processing ideas and how some of those ideas could become disruptive to an entire industry segment. Now, after Axel's presentation, he'll answer questions we get from the audience, and we'll share them via this Zoom chat and everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, Axel Schultz.
Woo! Thank you so much, George. And yeah, hello from my side. This time I'm actually from the other side of the Atlantic here in Switzerland, where we're working on a couple of projects right now and, having sort of my eye on Silicon Valley constantly. So yeah, as George said, we were trying to understand how ideas get created, and particularly from entrepreneurs, from disruptive entrepreneurs. And that was an initial fail until we got into neuroscience, actually by accident. Like oftentimes great ideas come from accidents. And we realized later on, it wasn't really an accident. Like all great ideas actually didn't come from accidents, but that is something we had to learn through neuroscience. And I will walk you real quick through this journey. So you'll probably remember the Society 3 logo on the left-hand side. That was actually the company where we did the whole startup support and the accelerator. We transferred this business to the World Innovations Forum. We wanted to make it a nonprofit organization, and Society 3 was a for-profit organization. And as such, we actually did not anticipate to do anything with Society 3 anymore, other than basically let it stop there. But once we realized there is an enormous opportunity, understanding how disruptive ideas get created, making a process out of it, a method, and then an application even. And so this is where Blue Column started. So when we looked into corporate innovation dilemmas, it was mostly the question, what can we do to get our team more creative and more entrepreneurial and more innovative? And most of the executives actually failed because they, like anybody else in the world, did not really know how this works in our mind. And so the questions were predictability, manageability, I mean, all these kind of things. And we had been through these questions, how does this work, many, many times. And almost always we had no answer. And so we finally looked into other analogous situation where something happened in our society, which was actually stunning. And these were the range of the athletes. I mean, we see these pictures and most of you say, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I do that too. But if you go just about 70 years back in time, so this was in the 50s, people climbed up actually Half Dome, in Yosemite National Park, and it took about 7 to 10 days. 7 to 10 days. Boom. In the 2000s, 2 hours and 20 minutes. So something must have happened that changed something. There's still ropes, it's still hooks, but somehow this cat goes up in like no time. And the question was, what's the difference? Skiers in the 50s, skiers in the 2000s. Yeah, the clothes are different, the equipment is different, but there's much more than that. Just look at how these people are actually, flying balanced on the snow. One of my favorites, motorbike artist in the 50s, still a motorbike, is somebody stands on top of this, and this is what people do today. So the question is, what is happening between back then and today? Because if you look at the equipment, it's still a motorbike and still somebody with his shoes and his jackets on. It looks obviously more modern, but there's something else happening to most of these people. It was not evolution. We knew that, but there must be something else. And we realized today, top athletes know almost so much more about their body, energy consumption, nutritious needs, what can they train and how often and what happens when they train it. They go down to a single muscle and stuff like that. So the understanding of the body of every individual who is in this athlete's business has profoundly changed. And so that was the trigger for us. We said, we need to rethink innovation. We need to understand, if we want to be an athlete in innovation, we need to understand how our piece of the body, which is actually critical to us, the brain, how that works. And initially people laughed at me, I have to say, and I wasn't disappointed because, how crazy can that be that you want to find out how this thing up there works? 86 billion neurons. I mean, trillions and trillions of brain cells storing stuff and processing things. I mean, it sounds really, really crazy. But what I learned from nature is built to work extremely simple. Everything we do must work extremely simple because otherwise we would not survive. And I learned this actually from an aeronautic expert who explained to me why birds are flying, these amazingly, and how simple it is. And the airplanes today are still most simple architecture. And so we realized there is two profound shifts. One, we humans are not creative at all because our ideas are compositions of past experiences. And everything this is stored in this thing called brain or in our mind is a past experience. We cannot create an experience by itself. We're not gods. So, but what we can do is assemble what we already have seen or learned or heard. And then when we put this together with these billions of neurons, and I don't need to go through all the text, I leave this up to you when you want to revisit the presentation. That is when one of these capsules connected with another capsule actually compiles a new chemical substance. And if a couple of these capsules around this one actually realize that this is an interesting model, then this is what our system calls a new idea, a new thought. And it's actually creating an emotion that we haven't experienced in that form. That's all it does. So it is actually critical and it is simple for innovation. So we cannot create, but we can compose. And when we compose, then there's one other thing that we all probably will really like. If you can something imagining, then you can make it. You have heard this probably many times. But if you can something imagining, then you also now know it is from past experiences that is composed. So there is nothing new. So if we can imagine to do this or that, no matter how crazy it is, we will sooner or later be able to build it or make it happen. And so there is an inherited disadvantage that we cannot create, but an inherited enormous advantage that when we can think it, we can make it. So this is not just a motivational speech anymore. This is actually a profoundly understood concept of our mind. And this is when we let this go and when we let us run, this is when we can start really getting innovative. And so the key of innovation is experiences, and we call it innovation silver because something else is gold. But it's all about experiences. If you have not experienced ever anything around LexiCrypt, you will not be able to even a poop around LexiCrypt. You cannot do anything with LexiCrypt if you have no idea what it is. And I give you this job to think about, innovate something around LexiCrypt. I can tell you, going to the internet and Google it, you won't find it. Probably yet, because so many people already searched for it. So when we started to go innovative, to go, go wild, we started with brainstorming. And brainstorming, producing the first obvious ideas. Now, this is actually another shocking thing. Brainstorming does not work for innovative ideas because our mind, the brain, is a very energy conscious element. So it can work for an hour and come up with all kinds of ideas, but it looks automatically, because it's very efficient, for obvious things and obvious combinations. And if you could come up on any brainstorming meeting with anything, anybody else could do the same, which means there is a logical reason why this is never gonna be a groundbreaking innovation. It may be a little bit of improvement. There might be very cool ideas, and it's definitely fun, but it's not groundbreaking innovation. So another thing is, when the brainstorming is basically over, you have all experienced this. You go away and you're happy that you found sort of the 5 best ideas. And even if yours was not the best, it's still okay, because as a team, we found a solution. A day later, or maybe sometimes even an hour later, you come back and say, you know what? I thought about this a little bit more. And this was actually an amazing question, but I have a completely new idea. And what happens then? People would say, oh, come on, Tom. I mean, it's enough. I mean, we were sitting and chewing through all of this. We have a solution now that we want to stick with. Let's build this first. And then maybe you can come with your quote unquote crazy idea. And this happens in 80% of brainstorming meetings. Now, today we know this is one of the biggest mistakes, because the brain starts to look a little bit deeper. It was not satisfied with the ideas that came up and is actually looking for other connections. And so the deeper you go, the better idea come up. Now, if you dismiss it, well, that is really bad. So neuro ideation makes the post-brainstorming ideas get to the forefront. But we also realize that even that is not good enough for groundbreaking innovation, because our brain does something else. When you just chew long enough, you look for analogous experiences. Remember I showed you what the athletes did, and which has nothing to do with innovation. I mean, it's body and training and doing crazy stuff. But that was one of the things that popped up in our mind when we looked for different things. We said, what? I remember, these sports guy, 50 years ago, how that was going on, and today, and this cannot be evolutionary development. And so this is a process we found out later, again from neuroscience, that this is something the brain does when it gets basically into a stage of, still not good enough, let's try again. And so it collects these other ideas or other connections to form new ideas. And now if you start thinking about, and if you are a startup compared to a larger enterprise, you realize probably, yeah, this is what we're doing once in a while. And sometimes I get crazy because can't we go actually as a side and just move on? No, you cannot, you should not, unless you give up. So our mind is constructed in a way that the biggest and boldest ideas need to be digged out from the very deep of our mind. And it doesn't release it automatically, because in the last 5 million years since this machine has actually evolved, there was no need for that. There was no need for crazy disruptive ideas. Everything we actually needed was simple survival. And in simple survival, speed is more important than perfection. There is a dangerous animal, so you need to know within milliseconds, you just freeze, or you run, or you never run, or whatever it is. But there was no need to deep, and, weeks later you come up with an idea. So this is a new thing, and this has to do with our neocortex, that is actually the forefront of our brain, that allowed us to do that. So with analogous, there's also post-analogous, and then we realized there is something else, and this goes again. This is only possible with our neocortex, and this is something where most other animals, even if we don't really know how intense they can actually create ideas, but this is something that goes very, very deep in the front. And we said, okay, what would be in the very future relative to the past, and no boundaries and no limits? This is a thought process or thought construct that only humans can do. There was lots of tests with apes, with dolphins, with all kinds of people who are trying to emulate or simulate a future scenario and tried to make them do something that goes in that direction, and it always failed. So with that power, if we ask, so what is possible if there is no limits, and how would this look like in 50 to 100 years? We come to a solution that is most likely impossible. And that is one of the keys to groundbreaking innovation. And this is the same situation where most enterprises or most large companies or most people actually would say, are you crazy? I mean, this is not possible. We don't have even the tools. We don't even know how this works. So forget about it. Let's focus on what we can do and not dream about crazy things. Now, if you look at dreamers with crazy things, you'll probably get to names like, Bill Gates, or Mark Benioff, or, Jeff Bezos, and. And you will probably stop when you realize, okay, Tesla was, when they started, a total different company. And actually when the company turned around, somebody else came in and basically turned things completely upside down. And he is known as one of the craziest entrepreneurs ever. And this person dreams into a future that is not possible. But he's not the only one. Actually, most of us entrepreneurs do that or did that. And so when we want to get into the future, we know, and this is another fancy fact, that disruptive ideas are, in the moment where you're thinking about it, must be impossible. Because if they would be possible, everybody else could go. But if it's impossible at this very moment, and I mean, most people did this just by intuition, but now we know how this machine works. If we know that past experience lead to new experiences that we create based on facts from the past, we also know that dreaming is not just, crazy stuff. It's actually building up a future that doesn't exist today. And people who build a future that do not or does not exist today, that's when we call them visionary. And these are the entrepreneurs who build basically truly groundbreaking innovation ideas. So we need to let go from the fact that brainstorming helps. We need to let go that when people come back with ideas after the brainstorming, that this is disruptive or basically not good. And we need to let go from the concept that crazy things that are impossible should not be touched, because the whole chain is the other way around. When we think of things that are impossible, we will be able to make it a reality in the next 2 to 5 to 10 years. We will be, because we cannot even create something that is impossible. So therefore, this is very logical and positive. We need to understand that we need more time to think through things to get to this point, and not stop after we put some yellow stickers on the wall and said, okay, this is the best idea, we just go with it. So this is the profound difference between neuro ideation and everything we've done in the past. And I can tell you, this has nothing to do with me being extraordinarily intelligent or anything like that. This has exclusively to do that we accidentally found that neuroscience has the answer for how ideas get composed. And I learned it basically how thoughts get composed. It wasn't even about ideas, but I realized a thought is idea is equal. And I realized that if we take this all the way upside down and put this into innovation, we actually start a completely new path of getting ideas to work. And so at the end of this process, of this neuro ideation process, we call this the Blue Column Summit. This is when we get all together again. And togetherness, by the way, is one of the most critical parts of neuro ideation, because the more people basically contribute ideas, they contribute experiences virtually. So we can actually call the whole neuro ideation process also virtual ideation, because when we learn from others, if I can tell you, I can tell you a story like I, climbed once, a Matterhorn in Switzerland, for instance. I didn't, but just let's take this as an example. And I walked up on this path, because everybody walks up on this northern path, and I could tell where it was difficult and where it was less difficult and where we just almost got killed, and I mean the whole story. And if I'm a super storyteller, you feel like, wow, this guy was great. I felt like, I was part of it. And guess what? I transformed an experience that I had into your head, and you feel that experience. So, and this is actually extremely critical. We do this as a team at the end, but that is not the most critical part. When you tell your boss, who is a very straight, operating executive, has no clue what you're talking about and dismisses your idea, then he dismisses it because he never had even parts of your experience. If you be a storyteller and can tell him the entire process of how the whole team got to this idea and who was there and what they did and what the experimentation was and what the customer said in the market and the idea validation and the whole story, he may actually realize, wow, that's interesting. Let me talk to a friend. He is blah, 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 and see what he thinks. And guess what? Understanding the emotion of our brain, compiling experiences and getting it actually even from other people, that's what we call learning. And so you need to teach your executive your experience so he can learn why your idea is a great idea. And one of our research indicated that 95% of all great ideas in enterprises around the world are dismissed. So the question is, what's wrong? Are 95% of intelligent, smart people in these corporations that have been hired and highly paid but dismissed, are they all stupid? No. Are the executives all stupid? Yeah, people love to yeah, that's true. Well, no. There is a disconnect in experiences. And so what we need to do is we need to shut down time to innovate from start, a very specific starting point, like in our case, innovation opportunity discovery, to idea validation. And then walk to the executive and say, okay, this is what we did. We got our opportunity discovered in this and this scenario. We worked out a strategy. We did the neuro ideation. We went back to customers with our idea and interviewed all of them. And there were 42 and we were 10 people. And so we talked 4 people each. The results are just stunning. And this is why we need now $100 million to build this over time, not right now, but that is because if we don't get the 100 million, then we better not start, because it's a waste of time to build something that cannot be executed long term. And if you tell it that way, you will probably fail. But if you start with that, you will let the other person chew on it. And like the first idea on the brainstorm meeting is never the best. He will not be able to comprehend it just because you tell him. He needs the same, because we all have the same brain, 3 pounds, 86 billion neurons, and they need to work on something. So if we get our own ideas that way and transform it into others, that's the point in time when we get, so to speak, innovative. The biggest problem we got stuck was when we get a good team, we get hundreds, if not thousands of idea pieces. And every good idea is composed of idea pieces. It's never the one thing. I mean, never, ever. So we said we need to have application to actually put it in and even help us sift through and rank it and rate it and give it stars from other people and the likes and the typical things. And so we built this application starting about 9 months ago, and we're entering beta tests in I think in 3 weeks. This is beta 2. We have a current beta test where we have a few customers, a large pharmaceutical company, a university, tech company, and so on, working on it. And with that technology, we also realized the biggest, boldest thing we need is a executive dashboard. Because if we cannot keep the executives basically in the loop through the innovation process, we may have the best innovation in the world. We will not get it through their approval. That's a fact of life. And so we cannot say they're stupid or anything. What we have to do, like they have to do, they tell you, be more innovative. And this is probably the most used phrase around the world these days. Then the counter is, okay, you need to learn what we did. And we understand that learning isn't done by telling you, it's by showing you, by involving you. You know the phrase, I mean, tell me and I will forget. Show me and I may remember. Engage me and I will comprehend. And you need to do this the reverse thing with your boss as well. So we built a whole innovation life cycle on a map that we call the innovation journey map. And you see here, in the middle is the Neuro Ideation. And with the Neuro Ideation, everything in the process actually up and down changed. I mean, it distorted the whole innovation process. And this is why we call ourselves, disrupting the act of innovation itself. So the bosses, and we had sort of first very successful projects, are obviously very happy because now they know and comprehend what type of employees they need. They make different considerations. They don't need an early warning system anymore because, it's a waste of time to look always at the competition. They need to look at their creative ideas of their team. And if it's methodical and manageable, they get actually really happy. So empowering teams is one of the most critical part in the innovation process, because empowerment, literally speaking, means putting them into power. And into power, in our case, critical. They not only are allowed to dream, I mean, they are allowed to do anything they need for getting their whole, capacity unfolded. And with that, I know I took, was pretty good at time. Thank you very much for listening. If you're interested, you can go on to worldinnovationsforum.org. You find a lot of things there. And also on the mothership, Blue Column, you'll find details about the methodologies and the technology and so forth. But today it's World Innovations Forum Day, so to speak. And our job is to help the world understand the importance and the relevance of innovation and what we're actually capable to do as humans. Because right now we get trained to be like robots. I mean, 89% in the world are actually repeat jobs. And we know that we're increasing our automation process for non-repeating jobs, but we don't have education for non-repeating jobs because we train people to be different. And that is probably one of the biggest tasks we're trying to undertake in the next decade, or in the current decade, in the World Innovations Forum, that we also even influence our thinking on education to people. Thank you very much. I give it back to George.
Thank you, Axel. Thank you. Hey, we got some questions that have come in. Maybe we can throw 2 or 3 your way here. One of the questions is, who would be the ideal person to run such an innovation project?
Cool. Yeah. I think the ideal person, funny enough, is actually a good, inspiring manager. It wouldn't be an expert in anything, because the expertise of an innovation manager running a team is actually navigating, inspiring, motivating, and organizing a team, and not so much being the thinker, him or herself.
Okay. I have another question. Will people who have their own innovation process be able to use it with the Blue Column system?
Interesting question. We were thinking absolutely no, because we did believe that we have the best methodology. But in our advisory board, funny enough, is a person, one of the COOs of SAP. And interestingly enough, the one who kicked off D-School, the design thinking school for SAP worldwide. And he was telling me that this would be a bad idea if he would do that. And so we started to build a module. So this is early on, it's not announced, but we started to build a module which is actually running on the same platform. And it will be the design thinking module. And with that, we realized there are other cool methodologies out there. So over the next year, we'll probably have 1 or 2 methodologies also running on our system.
Okay. The last question, I saw you offer trainings, but no registrations yet. When would you start?
Yeah, sorry. I was actually hoping that we get it done by today. The current starting arena is basically around February next year. And the collateral and the curriculum and all the materials is almost ready. So we will probably announce it in the next 2 weeks, but it will be very early next year.
Okay. All right, Axel, thank you. All questions that aren't answered today on the meetup will be answered via email. So keep your questions coming in. And I want to thank Axel for his presentation and answers to the little Q&A. And Axel, thank you very much for today.
Thank you, George. Thanks a lot.
There is one more question from that's on the Q&A, George. You'll see it in there. I don't know if you saw it, but.
Okay. All right. I don't, wait a minute. Wait. I don't see it. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, may I read it?
Sure, go right ahead.
If you want to read, okay, thank you.
Sure, forgive me. As the process is discrete and ideation is often considered a non-discrete phenomenon, does neuro ideation apply to a discrete process to a non-discrete process, or does it serve to transform the non-discrete into a discrete process?
Wow, this is an amazing question and loaded. So, I mean, the phenomenon, and we call it often the demystification of ideation. So the phenomenon is pretty much sort of unearthed and discovered. And so it is to some extent actually a discrete process. Like I said earlier, so the way the neurons actually compile or assemble or compose ideas from past experiences is not really sort of randomly anymore or a non-discrete process. So there's a little bit of that. But on the other hand, with 86 billion neurons that we cannot control, at least not today, there is something else. And so I feel your question actually inherits a very interesting concept that I have to say, battling with right now, is the transition from non-concrete to concrete. And one of the answers that you might see on our Canvas model is another way how we get trained to think, which we call a linear thinking, step by step. And we're not really introducing, we're favoriting a non-linear, a so-called lateral process, where we go back and forth. And it would probably exceed this webinar or this event to get into details. But yeah, I would love to have a discussion with you, because this question can only come up from somebody who has deep understanding of how we do things. And so it's a cool one. And it's actually one of the difficult ones we're facing. But we cannot just believe anymore, like it's random, it's somehow, and we need to let it flow and it will come, because that is something we know it does not.
Axel, I know who asked the question. I'll make sure that you two get in contact with each other. Okay.
Super.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Thanks, Axel. Our next presenter is Eric Milliken, who is the founder and principal of startup law firm Sutter Legal. And offices for Sutter Legal are located in San Francisco and Orinda, California. And Sutter Legal fills a very important business niche in the Silicon Valley, a law firm devoted to startups, how to be incorporated at the right level, intellectual property, patents, trademarks, anything that a startup would need to move their company forward, has literally found thousands of startups in their service. So ladies and gentlemen, Eric Milliken. And Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, George. Greatly appreciated. I've been working with George Parrish, Axel, and Marita for probably 7 or 8 years now. We have a great, and they asked me to come in today to talk about how, once you have your idea, you've formed it, how do you protect it and how do you bring it out into the wild, into the market? And we have a lot of experience with this. I started this firm 9 years ago, just like George was saying, specifically to deal with startups and helping them bridge these gaps. Firms out there, there's a lot of big ones out there that do the same thing as us. But they're also really looking for the big clients. We like working with the entrepreneurs. We like working with smart people, ambitious people, and creative people. And we've just found a really nice spot in San Francisco. We have about 300 startup clients that we've worked with, and we're approaching $1 billion of closed finance or M&A money at this point. So we've just had great success. We're a 5-person law firm, and so we handle everything on the spectrum of what a startup needs. But like I was saying, we're here to talk about intellectual property. Once you've developed this idea, this model, how do you protect it? And we've had a lot of experience in seeing where the areas are that startups and new companies have friction. One of the big areas, just to start, is how do you name your company? Naming a company can be hard on a lot of levels, from a creative level, from a language level, like how does it translate? There's all kinds of areas where that can just really have friction. But then on a legal level, you come up with this name, like it, you shopped it around, you've translated it into multiple languages to make sure it worked. You've got the domain, but can you actually secure that name? And that's where we come in. We do a trademark search to ensure that a company can actually trademark their name. And if you can't, somebody else has already trademarked that name and they're doing something similar to you, then you might end up getting a cease and desist. You might get sued. There's all kinds of problems. So it's really important to choose a catchy name, a unique name, and to make sure that you can actually secure it. Think of a trademark as identity theft protection for your company. Once your company is formed and once you're releasing products, you don't want a competitor to come out there and make a similar name to yours and start selling a similar product. Sometimes you cannot patent your product. And so you're stuck with this, with your name. Your name and your brand is your most important thing when you can't patent. And so if you can't trademark it, then you really have a hard time identifying yourself in the market. Your customers will get confused and your competitors could come in and essentially not product and your name, and what are you left with? So that is an incredibly important part of choosing, protecting your intellectual property. Is just protecting your own name, making sure you're nobody can knock you off. Once you have a trademark, it actually gives you a lot of power as far as social media, because Twitter will take a name from a squatter and give it to the trademark holder. So will Facebook. Google will stop people from infringing on your name. There's all kinds of things you can do, but the big social media and search engines won't even talk to you unless you've filed and attained your trademark. So it's an incredibly important step. You don't necessarily need a lawyer to get started on that. You can go to uspto.gov and you can do your own search through there. And it's a great place to start. Just because it's clean there, that doesn't mean it's isn't all clear, but it's a good place to start. And then from there, you probably want to bring it to a trademark attorney to review to make sure you're good to go. So then the next kind of stage of intellectual property is, do you have something that is patentable? And that's an incredibly important thing to determine, because once you have a patent, you have a monopoly on that idea or that innovation for a particular amount of time. Now, some things are not patentable, and we advise companies to keep them as what we call a trade secret. So a trade secret is something that you can do it better than anybody else, but it might not be patentable. It's your secret sauce. And so within your own company, this is kept a secret. It's on a need-to-know basis. And this could be a piece of code. It could be a process. There's all kinds of things that this trade secret could be. And if it's not patentable, it's incredibly important to keep it as a trade secret. Now think of one of the biggest brands in the world is Coca-Cola. The trade secret is the formula they use to make their cola. And it's locked in a vault. It's not on a computer. And there's only a few people with access to that. So that would be one of the most highly protected trade secrets in the world. And at this point, it's probably more marketing than anything else, but nonetheless, that's how they treat it. And as far as what trade secrets you would discuss with whom is a question we find. If an investor asks, what is your trade secret? How does your thing work? Startups are always hesitant because they want to be open and honest with their investors, also with their customers. They get asked this question, what does it do and how does it do it? So let's decouple those two things. The what is our invention? What's our innovation and how is it better than everybody else's? The what is what you market. You market how or what your thing does and why it's better. And this is something you share with everybody. Some people are kind of protective of what their company does. I don't think that's in the spirit of the Silicon Valley startup. Share what you do. It is incredibly important. Vet it. People give them feedback. Then the second part of that question is, how does it work? The how is your trade secret. And before you start sharing your how with an investor, now this could be actual code. You can show them how the code works. Or it could be with a customer. They say, I don't understand how this works, and if it's scalable or if it's legal or what have you. I want to see how it works. Or even a competitor in a conversation will ask you, well, how did it work? These are the types of things that you don't want to disclose. Or if you do disclose it, for example, to an investor or a company that wants to purchase you, that will be protected by a non-disclosure agreement. And that needs to be secured before you broach the how of an innovation. So if it's a trade secret, you got to remember the what and the how. And if it's a how question and you have to disclose it to a acquirer or an investor, that is a time when you would possibly ask for them to sign an NDA, but not through a pitch of what we do and, you know, that early stage. The next question we get regarding intellectual property is, can I patent this? And we have to go through a series of different questions to get to that. But one of the important things is to distinguish between the types of patents. There's a provisional patent, which people confuse with an actual patent. There's a design patent and a utility patent. Provisional patent is something you file that essentially saves your place in line. You make certain representations about what your innovation will do. You file it, and typically this will be through a patent attorney. And you make certain claims, but that's it. And it saves your place in line for 1 year. Now, the way the patents work is first come, first serve. So if you are the first to file a patent, even if it's provisional, you save that place in line and you prevent other people from coming in behind you and filing a patent. So provisionals are very important, and a provisional could be a design patent or utility, either way. But all it is really a placeholder. Design patent is more about the unique qualities of your product or innovation. Design patent is essentially like the iPad. The iPad did a design patent on the rounded corners of the iPad. And Samsung also made rounded corners on their tablet. So this caused a patent dispute, and it turned into a $1 billion patent dispute, and Apple won. So design is like the aesthetics, the outside, how it looks. And these are typically a lot simpler types of patents to file. There's a lot less to them. You don't have to get into as complex of disclosures and innovations on that. Whereas it's with a utility patent. Utility patents are typically one of the more robust patents. It to the usefulness of the process, machines, the articles of manufacturers, the composition of the matter, or any improvement thereof. I mean, these are the holy grail of patents. They tend to be a lot more work to put together. It takes a lot of man hours to get these ready. The legal process tends to run quite some time. Now, with all these patents, from the date you file it could take minimum of a year to get this granted, get any of them granted, with the exception of the provisional patent. And the reason being is there's a lot of process. People can object to your patent. They can say it infringes on their patent. There's a lot that goes into it. Some of these could take up to 5 years to get granted if there's a lot of pushback from the USTO. One of the big questions we get from our early stage companies is, when should I file a patent? And the answer is, as soon as you can afford it. Building up your intellectual property portfolio is one of the most important things you can do for your company. Basically building a moat around your company to protect you from your competitors coming in, from copycats or straight up thieves. When you go to pitch for venture funding or for other types of investors, having your patents lined up is going to be very helpful to convince them that you have a unique product, that you can protect your product, and that it's not going to just be knocked off. There are some studies that show that companies that own 3 or more patents receive about 20% more on an acquisition price. And in some cases, we've seen the entire acquisition is based on the patent portfolio. Nothing else, not the market, just the portfolio of patents. So, I mean, that's a brief rundown of the intellectual property that you're going to have as a startup, how to protect them, and how that works into your business model. These types of talks can get kind of dry, especially on patents. So I really like getting feedback from the audience. So I'm going to open it up to questions, and it could be about trademarks, copyrights, patents, or what have you.
Eric, it's George. Thank you very much for that little deep dive there onto the patent. I want to ask you a real world question that might, I'm sure you and your team have come across in the past. When does this process become really expensive for a company? When it's not taken care of at the very, very beginning, when it's not brought up? I mean, when it gets to a point, I know those are real day-to-day things that creep up all the time with different types of startups in different types of business verticals.
Yeah, that's a really good question. For example, a trademark. If you rush out, get your domain name, start branding, and start signing on customers, and find out later that your name has been taken, competitor or somebody that's similar in that same space, it can be a huge headache. So essentially you have to go back and change your name. You have to find a new name. You have to tell all your customers, oh, by the way, now we're going to be called this. And if you just do a little thinking on this and do a little vetting on your names at the very beginning, it can save a lot of money and a ton of hassle. That's a very important one.
Okay. And when companies come to you for the very, very first time, what do you offer these companies?
I mean, first thing we offer is a free consultation. I mean, we want to sit down and talk with a new client. The reason being is life's too short to deal with people that you don't want to deal with. And we want the client to like us. We want to like the client. We want to make sure we align on our values. And so we'll offer that free time. And it's not like a heavy sales pitch. It's really a get to know you session where we do Q&A and we just answer any and all legal questions that the client will have.
Okay.
And we find that this is extremely helpful. Like, it just clarifies a lot of questions that a new startup will have.
Okay. Well, listen, I want to thank you for the presentation and answering the questions. And if anybody else has any other questions, please feel free to go to the website, sutterlegal.com. And there you can ask him anything and make an appointment to get in and talk to Eric about patent issues, trademark issues, and intellectual property issues. So thank you, my friend. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much. It was helpful.
Okay, take care. Take care. Our next speaker is angel investor and mentor, John Rygaard. Now, John especially enjoys working with companies and accelerating their growth in the startup space. He's here to talk today about membership in the World Innovations Forum community and becoming part of the World Innovations Forum. So, John, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thanks a lot. Everybody else is probably already getting up and shaking a little bit. It's always good to at the one, almost the 1 hour mark that we do that, and I'm glad to be here. The moment I met Axel and Marita, I knew I wanted to be in their club, whatever it was. It didn't matter because they're quality people, and I keep reflecting on something that I've heard from one of my mentors in the past, who said the 5 people or the 10 people, but that's core group of people that are around you that influence you, they are the ones that are going to influence you the most, and their thinking, like Axel was talking about, will actually come to you because just being around them, thinking how they think, and they take a thought and they go 5 degrees or 20 to 25 degrees. All of a sudden, your mind's going, yeah, I guess that's possible. So I met them. We had some great dinners, and Axel and I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley going around. I was, of course, he knew it better than me, but I have a lot of people that I work with down there, and I was introducing them, and we had a ball because we were talking about innovation. I'm gonna summarize. Really, it's not going to be long, everybody. You can be onward to your run or your next business meeting, but I reflect on the fact that when we have clubs that we're in, or that we're part of groups, or that we're part of the US ski team, or whatever we're part of, there's a couple of things about those groups that attract most people. One, there's somebody that knows what the heck they're coaching or teaching. We don't just go and gravitate unless there's some sort of Kool-Aid that's really bad tasting. We're not going to go to the wrong groups. We're human. We're smart enough. We see the DNA in somebody and we go, that's a person I want to go and learn from. I mean, Axel, his first 2 startups, he calls it crazy. I call it, let's see rock and roll. I mean, he's coming up with his 5th company with Marita, and that's Blue Callum, and that is crazy good, as we refer to it. And just the fact that he's out there in front trying something. Computer 2000, everybody, if you look that up, back in 80s, you're going to be amazed that Axel was at the forefront. That's a $5 million company. I think now that it's been bought, it's like in the $5 billion when he brought it to the highest level. Now the people that bought that company are now at 7 billion. Okay, that's a good idea. Just slightly good idea. And the reason I'm just wanting you to just sense that you are in the right place is that innovation is not normal. When I'm around startups and when I was in startup companies in Silicon Valley, I felt the energy. It was like a buzz. And I like, wow, let's do this voicemail stuff that I was learning how to do. Voicemail wasn't anybody's idea then. And let's go do these data centers. And it wasn't anybody's real core idea. But you know what? Somebody in that group led us, and they did. And then we were all so excited and moving. Well, this right here is a club. This is a group. This is a place where you can hang your hat. There's what's that song? Cheers. George can help me out, but everybody knows your name. And all of our middle names are innovation. And if we all take that to heart here, we will be able to make it through any pandemic issues, any concerns, because there's a need for products and services in this world every day. And there's a need for innovation because it saves costs, increases productivity, whatever the case may be. So there's always going to be more of it. But where do you get that from? Because when I was part of these startups, I wasn't in the inner circle when I was part of those two that I mentioned. The people that were at the startup level were, and they had help from venture capital. You know, it's pretty hard to get into it. You know, if you want to try to get into a venture capital and have them give you a lot of love, that means that they're planning to make a lot of money with you, which is fine. But what about if you just want some help? You want some patent help? I'm amazed. I mean, Eric is absolutely at the top of his game in San Francisco, and we've got him as a specialist on this call. Crazy, as we say, right? That's, you know, when you come to a club like this, you're going to have lots of other benefits, but innovation is number one. And I just want to make sure I emphasize that because, you know, I think about Alabama football, for example. If you want to be the best in college sports, you go to Alabama and you play there. And I guess lately it's the LA Lakers are the best in the NBA, although the Golden State Warriors are better. But either way, you're going to get the best because that's the NBA. You guys get the point. But if you're not part of a group, you will struggle because you're going to have to learn on your own. And as you know, Axel said, that is not natural. It's not a natural thing to learn something you don't know. We learn it, how we learn it in the process that Axel talked about. And for him to unravel that, and he comes across like, oh, it's no big deal, I unraveled this. That's a big deal. I mean, he just really made it clearer for me when I'm thinking about, well, why? We got to have the brain right. We got to be around the right people. So thank you, Axel, on that. I'm just going to go through a few details to summarize, if that's okay. I think I'm still sharing screen. No, I'm not. Let's go back and share screen. John, push that button. There we go. All right. So we talk about, you know, this piece here. There's three top things I'm going to leave you with. The global space for innovative minds. That's the group here. Everybody across the world will be coming to this, guaranteed. They just need to learn more about it. And they need to know what they don't know. You think about innovation as our focus, great. There's thousands of groups, but they're the biggest problem, they don't have focus. Axel and Marita will not let the focus go away from that. In fact, they have, this is now, you know, the foundation that's supporting really the Blue Calum, which is the real crazy fifth company for them, and that's about innovation. Total focus on innovation. You can know that this is going to come your way. We've got, you know, the ability to have innovation acceleration for scale-ups. We also call those revenue-generating companies, or even revenue-generating startups, because they're starting to find their way. That's going to be a big movement in the next year. If you've got revenue, you definitely want to now start to innovate. Because one of the things that I realize, and I maybe Axel and I haven't talked about this, but people stop innovating. I mean, he says it all the time, I'm sure, but they stop innovating. They were not doing what they did when they were back in the startup days. I mean, innovation, we had those meetings that Axel was talking about. We're going here, you know, this subgroup was talking about how are we going to innovate to help the prospects. And this one was about marketing. And we were so fired up. We got together as a group, you know, in this one big corridor, and we listened to the founder telling us what was happening. We were in the space, and that's not happening when people get to be 2 years old, 4 years old, 6 years old. People leave those companies, don't they? In Silicon Valley, I mean, people, what's the average 3 years people stay around because the startup's over. It's no more thrilling. Why not making thrilling all the time? And that's how this group will help with that. This our group. So the monthly knowledge transfers, you're hearing one right now. The design school, you know, that's pretty amazing when you think about the Innovations Academy, which is even a broader category. I'm on the website now, so you'll be able to go to WIForum.org, WIForum.org, and you're going to see all of this, right? And you're going to see inside the details that are possible. This I wanted to stop on because I often refer to this. People, you know, come to me or they come to Axel 500 times more than me, and they say, "Well, why are you so good at this?" DNA. We've been around others. We've talked about that already. You got to get that, everybody. If you don't have enough DNA, then get it from the right group. You know, you're going to get a lot of support in here. You can see in, you know, in the website if you're able to view that up. I didn't move it too quickly, but there's lots of detail here. This is not just like I thought about it yesterday. I'm ready to show all of you. They've been doing it all their lives. 4 successful exits, everybody. Like people dream of one exit. And the first company, again, I told you how much. The second one was 1 billion in revenues as well. Woo, that's like that guy that was coming on a motorcycle, and can you see Axel up there with his head down, his feet back like that? That's what that is. That is amazing. All right, let's go back and finish up. All right. We're all ambassadors. You'll see some other people along the way. There's Juliet, who's very, very active, and you see, Eric and George. These are all ambassadors. We all want to help. We want to help to make it a better world. Now, here's the kicker. Like everybody wants more, money to put into their company, but this is not the number one focus. But it is right behind, because we of course know that people need money. So if you are needing some support, you're going to have to be innovative before we take you forward. But we will talk to you about it. Here's some more things as a part of that. We got financing in a different way. We'll talk to you about that. There's also the fact that we're fundraising through seminars. So we'll talk to you about that. So come back and ask us questions about that. All right, well, it's going to be happening now. December 2020 is right on us. All right. So if you want to be a member, that's really here. There's more on the website that I told you about at the bottom right-hand corner. You can go and look, but the individual members are 175, corporate members 300, and that's for these revenue-producing scale-up companies I told you about. And it can go up and up. From there, we've got other member levels. You'll see them in there. You got to spend money on innovation, otherwise your company's going to die. And that's it, George. If you have any questions or that kind of thing, I mean, answer them now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you. Quick question I have for you is, how many of the startups that you've worked with over the past, say 3 years, have fit into some kind of innovative mode, or have they used innovation that you could talk about a little bit?
Yes, I can. They're all innovative. Some have the right mentor team around them and some don't. Because an idea is not enough, but all of them have an idea. They think it's the greatest since sliced bread. 1928, we made sliced bread. I think and everybody uses that example, but it may not be it could be, but they need the right mentors around. And that's where I want to step in. I want them to join this group. So that's what happens. I mean, everybody, you think about it, I mean, everybody they get so fired up. And here's the real hard thing for people. They fall because they don't realize they don't have the right mentoring team. And the mentoring team has to have somebody who understands innovation, but they don't have it in many cases.
Well, listen, John, I want to thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And we'll be talking to you soon. And I'm sure there's going to be some startups out there that are going to want to talk to you either by phone or by Zoom or by GoToMeeting or something. Okay.
Well, I'm bringing them back to the organization. I want them to have the support of the entire organization, and then I'll be happy to work with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well put. Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. All right. You're probably wondering if we have a call to action today for everyone that's on the meetup, and we do. We believe that entrepreneurs and neuro ideation innovation is the next disruptive force in innovation, and we can only grow stronger with your ideas and your presence if you're beside us. Once again, I want to let you know that the URL for the World Innovations Forum is www.wiforum.org. And I also want to let you know that next Thursday on November 5th, Blue Callum will have another webinar that they'll be presenting, but on a different topic, this topic being deep innovation design, a process and a tool. And you can get to this and sign up for this by going to the www.bluecallum.com website, go to the events tab, and you'll be able to register for that particular webinar at that particular time. Also on that website, and this is very, very important, we have recordings of all of our other webinars that you're able to access at any time. So again, I want to thank everyone who's been with us today. I want to thank our presenters, Axel Schultz, Eric Milligan, John Reigard, as well as the World Innovation team in Lucerne, Switzerland. Thank you very much. I'm George Parrish, and here's wishing you to join us next month for another World Innovation Online presentation. Have a great morning, great afternoon, great evening, and thank you very much. Take care.